गुरु साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ओम शांति शांति शांति। Hello everyone. We are all gathered here on the occasion of the birthday anniversary of Nataraj Guru, as well as to celebrate the annual Guru Puja of the Bolare Gurukula. And the actual birthday of Nataraj Guru was on the 18th, and we celebrated here in Varkala in a short scale because of the corona condition prevailing. I think this corona condition has become a blessing in disguise, because more people can participate from different places in this function than it happens usually when it is held directly in the Kolare Gurukula. We started this Guru Puja. The Guru Puja means paying homage to Gurus. We started it by performing a fire sacrifice. Why is it so? Fire sacrifice belongs to the ritualistic tradition of Indian spirituality, and the gurus like Narayana Guru stood always for wisdom or jnana. The path of this wisdom is called Jnana Marga, and the path of rituals or karmas is known as Karma Marga. Then why should we begin this function by performing a fire sacrifice, which pertains to the Karma Marga? The mantra we chanted here as part of this fire sacrifice was composed by Narayana Guru himself. If you go through the inner meanings of the mantra, you will see that it is not just performing a ritual, but transforming a ritual into a means of conveying wisdom. That is what is done in this mantra. So wisdom is giving importance, and within the range of wisdom is seen the action or karma also. This almost goes along with the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, where also we see the karma scene of the battlefield serves as a means for conveying the secret wisdom of India. The same is done by Narayana Guru here in this mantra. The meaning of this mantra, I don't go into the details of this mantra. If I go through it, it will take nearly an hour. I should simply say the meaning of it. O fire, O Agni Tavayat Tejas Tad Brahman. O fire, that brightness that belongs to you pertains to Brahman, or it reminds me of Brahman. Adastam Pratyaksham Brahmasi. For this reason, I treat you as the perceived or perceivable Brahman. Brahman actually is not perceivable, but here the Agni or fire is treated as perceivable Brahman, because Brahman is not perceivable, but here Agni or fire is taken to represent Brahman, and so Agni here is treated as a perceivable Brahman, and the Brahman that has become perceived in which form? In the form of fire. Fire is, of course, perceivable. Rastam pratyaksham brahmasi todiya indriyani manobuddhiriti saptajihvaha. Into you, the perceivable fire, which is Brahman, I offer todiya indriyani manobuddhiriti saptajihvaha. You have the 5 sense organs, mind and intellect, or the 7 tongues of Agni, fire. Indriyani manobuddhiriti saptajivaha toyi vishaya idu iti samito jihomi. Into these 7 flames, which is like 7 tongues of into you, which is into the fire that has 7 tongues, and fire is now considered as perceivable Brahman, and into that Brahman we offer the objects of senses, Vishayas, and also objects of the mind and intellect. So the Tadiya Indriya Swai Vishaya Idi Samito Juhomi. Into you, I offer as oblation the Vishayas of all the Vishayas, all the objects of sense organs, mind, and intellect as an offering. Aham iti ajyam juhomi. Then I offer myself into the same fire in the form of ghee or clarified butter. Aham iti ajyam juhomi. Tvam naha prasida prasida. Oh fire. Be pleased on us. Please on me. Tamna prasida prasida. Shreyascha prayascha prayacha. And also give us both prayas and shreyas. Prayas means all that is considered as valuable in the worldly life. Shreyas means all that is considered as valuable in the context of wisdom. So both are needed by us in our life. Worldly needs are there. Along with it, we need the wisdom also. So both have to come together in life. So be pleased, so that we have these both these, right? Shreyas and prayas. Swaha. Prayascha prayacha swaha. Then it ends with the sound swaha, which also is considered to be the sound with which all the fire sacrifices should end. It is simply the word meaning. I don't go into the detailed meaning of this Homa Mantra. I think Vinay Chaitanya is in Bangalore now. He will be able to give you a class on this Homa Mantra alone. So it is a tradition to begin all the auspicious things, auspicious events with a fire sacrifice. Here in the Gurukula, it is not in that sense we conduct this sacrifice. It is in the sense that we offer, just as Narayana Guru says in his Karma Darshana of Darshanamala, Atmaiva Maya Karma Karodi Bakuru Patrat. Atma reality, the ultimate reality itself that performs all the karmas, assuming numerous forms because of its own Maya. So it is in this sense, this in one reality or ultimate the Paramatma or Atma reality, that all the actions are taking place, including this, because of its own Maya. So when we understand this reality, that is the basic teaching that Vedanta gives. If we know, we have an understanding of this reality, we will always be giving primacy to wisdom, and actions, karmas, will always be seen taking place as willed by the same Paramatma or the Atma reality. In this case, in the present case, the action or ritualistic action becomes a means for attaining wisdom. So, what is the role of karma here? It is only a means. What is the end? The end is gaining wisdom. So, from where do you get this wisdom? It is from the gurus. You know, everywhere in India, Guruhood is always glorified and considered to be of the highest value in life. Everywhere there is an idea or a saying that wherever there is lack of Gurutva, everything is virtually lost. So, Gurutva is considered as of high value in India. When we celebrate a Guru Puja here in the Gurukula, this Guru is honored. This Guru is paying homage to. It is not any particular Guru. Even when we celebrate Nataraj Guru's birthday, it is not any particular Guru, including Guru, Nataraj Guru, is not honored. It is the Gurutva, the Guruhood. That is who is that is the one we are honoring. What is why we should glorify Guruhood in India? It is always done in everywhere in India, but the word Gurutva, Guru and Gurutva is used here in India alone. Even though now it is becoming known everywhere in the world. Why should we pay homage to a Guru? Guru always teaches wisdom. Wisdom about what? Wisdom about Wisdom is a knowledge, but it is much different from the knowledge we gained in our day-to-day life, in our schools and colleges, and all through our own experience. This is a different kind of knowledge. It is about what? It is about ourselves and the entire world. The entire world means not the earth alone, the entire cosmic system. What is to be learned about it? We should know that this world is one, the entire world as a whole is one, and we individual beings are living here as part of it. That world always exists, and we individual beings are like sparks getting out of the bonfire. That bonfire is the reality that appears as the entire world, and we are all sparks rising from it and disappearing. So what is the nature of our own existence, the status of our own existence? It is just like that of sparks rising from the bonfire. So what is that bonfire? That is what in India is known as Brahman, that we have already seen referred to in the Homa Mantra. And that is always, it is a reality, ever existing reality, but that existence is not simply an inert one, but it is just like a fire, bonfire, it always flames. In the same way, this one reality also exists, always actively, creatively. Rajguru always refers to it as a sort of dynamism. Without being dynamic or active, this ultimate reality never exists. What happens when it is active? Everywhere new appearances come and old appearances will disappear. And this process is what we perceive or we consider as birth and death. New appearances coming, it is called birth. Old ones disappearing, it is called death. Through birth and death, the ever-flowing life is going on. And how does it happen? No one knows. It is a mystery, which is referred to as Maya. That is, this creative existence itself is caused by Maya. What is Maya? Maya is something not known to anyone. It's a mystery, mysterious, creative urge. That is all. No definition can be given. So, this wisdom, also called jnana, teaches us or gives us a proper understanding about ourselves, the existence of our own being, and also the existence of the entire world. Are these two existences different? No. We individuals are all part of that ever existing one reality, and our transient appearances are just like sparks appearing in the bonfire, or waves appearing in the ocean. Ocean is always one, always it remains active, and as a result of that activeness arises numerous waves. And these waves have no eternal being. They come and go. This is the reality taught by wisdom. And this reality has been taught by, in ancient times, by the Upanishads. And Narayana Guru is also considered to be in forming part of that long line. That long line began with Narayana in one tradition and with Sadashiva or Shiva in another tradition. According to the Shaiva tradition, it began with Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmat Guru Paryandam Vande Guru Parambaram. That is the shloka or verse in which the entire line of gurus is referred to and paid homage to. Sadashiva Samarambham, beginning with Sadashiva or Shiva, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, Shankaracharya coming in the middle, and Asmadacharya Paryandam, and our own Guru coming at the end. So this long line, to this long line of gurus, I pay homage to. That is the meaning of this mantra. Now, what is the essential content of wisdom? We have already seen. Then why is the necessity of many gurus coming and teaching the same wisdom? Only one wisdom is to be taught, and we see a long line of gurus coming in the history, appearing in the history, and teaching the same wisdom in a new way. Even in the time of the Upanishads, if you go through closely the Upanishads, you will see that ultimately every Upanishad teaches one and the same wisdom. Then what is the necessity of having many Upanishads? The necessity is, even though the ultimate reality is one, gaining a proper understanding of it can be started from many angles. Different ways of approach are there, but what is perceived at the end is one and the same reality. Certain Upanishads begin with the question, what happens to us after dying? Some Upanishads begin with asking the question, how does this mind fall into its subject? How do all the indriyas or sense organs get into contact with their respective vishayas or objects? So that also leads us to the same question. So that means there can be many approaches to one and the same reality. And the Upanishads were composed thousands of years ago. And each Upanishad must have, between the Upanishads, there must be centuries or even millennium. Time-wise. And now, in the recent times, we see Narayana Guru also teaching the same wisdom. What is the necessity of having these different acharyas or gurus coming and teaching the same wisdom? The necessity is that when a guru or acharya composes a scripture, it is done with the by taking into account the time in which he lives and he speaks to, and the place where he lives and he is contacting. According to the people who are listening, he would have to change the way of composing it. And also, in each Upanishad, you will see a different way of scientific approach. The nature of scientific thinking prevailing in that particular time can be seen reflected in each Upanishad. The same is the case with Narayana Guru also. Narayana Guru was an Rishi who had the same vision that the Upanishad Rishis had, but he lived in the 18th and 19th centuries when the scientific thinking was growing very fast and industrial revolution was just beginning. So the wisdom taught in this circumstance would not be in the same way as the Upanishad Rishis of the past did. So he had to take into account the time he lived and the people whom he taught. So these people were those who were living in the scientific age. So he had to make use of the modern method of scientific thinking in presenting the very ancient wisdom also. Such is the way in which each Rishi or Guru teaches the same wisdom in a different way at a different time and place. The Upanishads always hold that this wisdom is a secret one. The word wisdom itself, no, word Upanishads itself has a meaning as secret wisdom, secret teaching. Of what kind is this secret? Is it a secret that should not be taught to anyone, or is it a secret that will not be understood even when taught? It is the secretness of this second kind that is understood here. The wisdom, the Upanishad wisdom could be tried to be taught at different by many people, many acharyas, but the essential content of the wisdom in it will be understood only by a very few. Why is it so? It is not understandable to the reasoning mind. Only people who have gone beyond the range of ordinary reasoning, and those who can go beyond that kind of thinking, and those who can resort to the what is known as yoga buddhi in India and dialectics in the West. Why is this a secret? Why can't it be understood by making use of ordinary sciences? This is a science in which nothing is left out. As Narayana Guru himself says, Agave Arinyal. It's a knowledge that Agave Ariga. It's a knowledge that knows everything comprehensively in as one. That means nothing is left out of it when comprehended. Nothing is left out means everything that becomes part of the world is taken into account. Everything is brought within its range, and even the one who thinks, the thinker, is also within it. That means the entire visible world and the person who perceives. It is not an object, not just an object, but it is the subject also that is learned. Subject means one who knows. So one who knows and everything one can know. All this is brought within the range of one reality, and that is what is known here. That means in this wisdom, no knower is left out. The knower and the known together forms the one reality that is it known, or we cannot say that it is known. If we say it is known, definitely the knower stands outside. But here the knower also forms part of what is known. It is when the knower also becomes the known, or the known also becomes known is also part of the known object, known reality, or known world also is not left out of the the knower. So is it the known or the knower that is more important? Narayana Guru, in the first verse of his Atmopadesha Shadakam, says, Aruvilumeri, Arinidanavan than Urivilum, Otupuratum Ujjalikim Garuvin, Kannagal Anju Ulladaki, Teredavin, Vanang Odide. In order to gain that Karu or core reality that is beyond the domain of everything known, Arabilum Eri, or ordinary knowledge, it is not an ordinary knowledge. And it is about what? Arabilum Eri, Aranjidanavan than Uruvilum, Uttapuratum Ujjalikim. It is a knowledge about the one bright reality, or always shining very bright. And that is the core reality here. It is called Karu here. So in order to gain that core reality that always shines brightly, how? In the form of everything that is known. And also in the form of the one who knows. So there is one core reality that shines brightly, and that bright shining is in the form of both the apparent, the perceived or known world, everything that is seen, and also in the form of one who knows. So it is one reality in a shining state appears both as the subject and object. It is that reality that is to be gained. What should we do in order to gain that one core reality that always shines? കണ്ണുകൾ അഞ്ചും ഉള്ളടക്കി we should interiorize our own sense organs. കണ്ണുകൾ അഞ്ചും ഉള്ളടക്കി തെരുതെര വീണ് വണങ്ങി ഒതിരണം. Constantly prostrate yourself before whom it is not stated there. Can be either to the very same reality or to the Guru or to oneself. കണ്ണുകൾ അഞ്ചും ഉള്ളടക്കി തെരുതെര വീണ് വണങ്ങി ഒതിരണം. You should be willing to pursue through it by interiorizing your sense organs and prostrating always before the very same reality or the self-reality. So that kind of submission should be there. And that submission can be either before your Guru or to what in religion is called God. Without this kind of self-surrender or self-sacrifice, you will never appear, you will never gain this wisdom. So that is so here itself we see that there's a kind of secretness in this knowledge. What is the secretness? We know many things. All these are known to us. So we are all knowers, and what is known stands outside. But here, what we are searching for is not such a reality. It is the one reality that shines both as the knower and the known. So it is neither the subject nor the object. It is one reality that appears as both these. And how can you approach it, gain it? How can you gain the knowledge of it? Of course, we know that we are living in this world. We are part of it. As long as we are part of it, what is the real content in the world should be what is the real content in ourselves also. The real the being in us should also be the being in the whole world. So in order to know the secret concerning the reality that underlies the being of this world, we don't have to go around and examine the world as if there is existing something underlying it. If there is a reality that underlies the entire world, the very same reality should be underlying the being of myself also. So what we should do is, instead of going around in search of that reality, we have to look at ourselves. And in order to look at ourselves, what we need is not going around and search of it. We should interiorize our perception. No sense organ will help you attain the real being in yourself. It is with the mind, your reasoning faculty, your sense organs. It is with the use of all these faculties in us that we search for something. But here, what we are in search of is not something existing outside, but something that exists in our own searching mind. The Ganopanishad begins with the word Keneshridam Padati Prashridam Manaha. How do our minds get into contact with their respective objects outside? That means the reality that is behind even mind, how can it be grasped with the help of your mind? The reality that is under the being or under the phenomenon of your thinking faculty, how can you get an understanding of it with the very same thinking faculty? No, it is not possible. So that is the sacred nature of this reality. And what is the ultimate benefit of it? Do you get any, does it help you get any job? No. The only benefit of it is you attaining the highest happiness in your life. What kind of happiness is it? Narayana Guru himself says, oh, സവനമൊഴഞ്ഞ് സമത്വമാർന്നു നിൽപ്പിയിൽ അവനിയിൽ ആരും നാദിലീലയത്രേ അവിരളമാകും ഇതാകവേ അറിഞ്ഞാൽ അവൻ അതിരറ്റ സുഖം ഭവിച്ചിടുന്നു. Nothing remains in this world without undergoing repeated becoming. One state of changes into another, that state gets changed into another. This kind of changes always happens in this world, and this is like new states are being born and old states disappear. This is what we call birth and death. Savanamozhinju samatvamarnu nilpila avaniyil. Nothing remains in this world without undergoing such a state like giving birth. Anadi Leelayatre. The ever going on this process of this kind of change is a sort of Anadi Leela, endless sport. Aviralamagami Ragave Arinyal, avan adiratta sukham bhavichidunnu. One who knows this endless process and boundless process of change, he attains the adiratta sukham. That means the boundless happiness. So that this kind of boundless happiness is the ultimate goal we attain through wisdom, through this wisdom. No other benefit is there. What do we mean by adiratta sukham, boundless happiness? Is it a kind of pleasure that we gain endlessly and boundlessly? No. The changeful events in this world results in our pleasures and pains also. So what is the status of this ever-changing pleasures and pains? This is nothing but the ever-changing state of the Ananda content of our being. Our own, this ultimate reality within us and everywhere in this world is defined in Vedanta as Sat, Chit and Ananda. So this Ananda is the content of our own being. Ananda is the content of the entire world. The same way, Chit, consciousness, is my own content. The real content in me is consciousness in essence. And that is what really exists, signified by the word Sat. That's Sat, Chit and Ananda. This Ananda, though means happiness, it is not the happiness that we derive from anything. It is the Ananda content of our own being, not derived from anything else. And this Ananda is neither pleasure nor pain. It is the one Ananda content in us and everywhere else that becomes experienced by us as pleasures and pains of our daily life. So when we have pleasures and pains in our daily life, we should have the inner vision that all these differing changeful states of pleasures and pains are nothing but one Ananda content of our own being and also of the entire being becoming functionally existing. So this Ananda content as such, it is not functional. When it becomes functional, it appears as both pain and pleasure. So in every instance of our pleasure or pain, we should have the inner vision to look at them as different ways in which the own Ananda content of our own being finds expression. That means in every pain and pleasure, we will be able to see the existence of the Ananda content of our own being directly felt, directly experienced. This perception of ours makes us able to perceive all the experiences in our life as one way, the same Ananda content finding expression in one way or another. This perception makes us see the one Ananda reality alone all through our life. That is what is meant by Adhiratta Sukham Bhavichidam. Of course, this kind of wisdom is not easily graspable. It needs what Narayana Guru himself calls tapas. It needs tapas from our own part. Tapas means a kind of eating a process that happens within. You know, in the history of Narayana Guru, as he having undergone tapas in Marutvamalai and also Arivipalam. At the end of the tapas, he had an enlightenment, and that enlightenment is fully reflected in the Atma Upadesha Shatakam. So what the Adhiratta Sukham, why did Narayana Guru say about Adhiratta Sukham, boundless happiness? He said so, asking us also to have the same goal in our life, to make our life a flow of eternal, boundless happiness. Otherwise, we will be going after one or another, and always our life will be in trouble, and that is what we see in the present world. So the only way to save ourselves from the never-ending process of troubles is finding ourselves one with the entire world as in the sub aspect, and finding that existential or sub aspect as pure consciousness, as chit in essence, and finding our own pleasures and pains as different ways in which one and the same Ananda content, finding creatively in a functional state. Thus, we find that our life, entire life, is a flow of Satchit Ananda. That is what results in the in our own, that is so this Satchidananda, finding ourselves experiencing Satchit Ananda in the day-to-day life. That is the goal we should we should reach as a result of this inquiry of the self. It is called Atma Anveshana, inquiry for the self. The inquiry for the self finally results in the Atma Sakshatkara, realization of who I am, which in result, which in effect is the realization of the entire reality concerning the entire world. That is Brahma Sakshatkara. Brahma Sakshatkara is experienced by each of us in the form of Atma Sakshatkara. Brahma Sakshatkara is something to be attained. Atma Sakshatkara is already attained by us. So such is the wisdom taught by Narayana Guru, taught by ancient rishis, and also taught by the long line of acharyas and gurus. We are also supposed to follow the same line of search for reality, search for ourselves, search for the meaning of life. So in practical life, what is the gain we have? Instead of living for momentary gains, momentary pleasures, we will be living a meaningful life. We will be finding the meaning of our own existence that will make our own life meaningful, and then we will find ourselves fully in contentment, in a state in which we are santraptas. So such a gain is to be kept in mind when we follow any guru in this world, whether it is Narayana Guru, Shankaracharya, or whoever it is. So my request to all those who listen to these words is that we should be very serious about this wisdom taught by Narayana Guru and Nataraju Guru. Nataraju Guru taught it in a more scientific. He tried to present Narayana Guru's wisdom in a more scientific way as it is understood in modern times. That is the only difference between Narayana Guru and Nataraju Guru. The same wisdom is taught in terms more acceptable to modern scientists. Narayana Guru was not a modern scientist, even though scientific methods can be seen applied in his writings. Rajguru was a scientist, and so it was more easy for him to transform Narayana Guru's wisdom into scientific terms. That is what he did all through his life, and the magnum opus of his of him is the very exhaustive commentary on the Darshanamala. It cannot be treated as a commentary. It is an elaborate re-visualization of Vedanta by putting the entire Darshanamala chapters within its 10 chapters. Such is the way it is written. So that is the way Narajaguru presented Vedantic teaching. So that the contribution of Narajaguru in this respect was presenting Vedantic wisdom in such a way, and also developing a method to be used for such a wisdom. It is not a method that is acceptable to reasoning mind, reasoning faculty. It is not a method accepted by for sense perception. It's an entirely different method that he developed. Actually, such a method was not one that was developed by him or formulated by him, but it was used by very ancient rishis, but it was not very specifically stated there as a particular, as the way of inquiry. Narayana Gurus, no. In the case of Narayana Guru, we can see the same method used in the very first stanza of the Atmapadesha Shadakam, where these two sides, the perception, the perceiver and the perceived, are two facets in which one and the same reality finds brightly shining. Then how can you know that one reality? Is it by treating as the knower side or treating as the known side? No, both are different ways in which one and the same core reality finds expression. So that one reality, core reality, can be attained only by keeping this known side and the knower side on both sides, and intuitively perceiving the reality that appears as these two. So there is a kind of hidden aspect in it. It is not directly told to you. So this strange method, trying to know what you intend to know by keeping two aspects of of the very same reality. Then you can see one side, both sides helping you to intuitively perceive one core reality. This is a method that Narayana Guru adopts. And the same Buddhist or reasoning faculty, reasoning is called Yoga Buddhi in India, and that is called dialectics in the West. So this particular method that was hiding in the ancient scriptures and ancient Western traditions was traced out by Nataraja Guru, and he taught us how to apply it in our attempt to gain wisdom. That is the contribution Nataraja Guru did as an original Guru. So by following all these Gurus and making use of this newly developed method, not newly developed, but picked up from the ancient scriptures and classics, and making use of in a new way. So our attempt should be to gain this wisdom by making use of this newly developed method of inquiry. That is what Nataraja Guru stood for, and let us try to gain wisdom scientifically by following all these gurus. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Guru. You would like to tell something? Guru, Amma would like to tell something.
Thank you so much for being with us, Guru. Thank you so much for being with us, Guru, today. It's really good. Thank you so much, Guru, for being with us today. It's a real blessing. And we wish you all the best, Guru. Prasad